Hi everybody, my name's Miss Allie and welcome to another episode of Cap at Home with Gold Detroit. Today we are going to be making a super cool project in our after school program. Today we will be making artist trading cards. So these are these cool little cards that artists make they're like mini art projects that you can trade with each other. So I'm going to teach you how to make these today in a couple of simple steps. And I'm going to switch over to my art board to get started. So let me just get all set up here. And as you can see my space today, I have all sorts of crazy materials with me today. So I am going to share that list with you. But before we get too far into our project for today, I just want to give a special thank you for you guys joining me live today. And I want to give a shout out to our new sponsors, our Community Education Commission of the City of Detroit and General Motors. And these are people who allow us to keep offering these free online art tutorials every week. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for sponsoring us. And on that note, let us get into making these awesome artist trading cards. And so like I had just mentioned, we have all sorts of materials with us today, and those materials include some sort of thick paper. I have something that is sort of like thick watercolor paper, like mixed media paper. But anything that's like sort of thicker, or even if you don't have thick paper, a trick would be to use normal printer paper or construction paper and actually glue it onto like a piece of cardboard, like a cereal box or something. That's also a good trick for something like this. But any cardstock or thick paper will work. And of course, our handy pencil, ruler, and then some sort of markers, colored pencils, crayons, anything like that. And we're going to need some sort of glue, so I have a couple of glue options over here, everything from glue stick, Elmer's glue, and Mod Podge. And we are also going to need, of course, the fun decorating materials. So over here I have things like magazine cutouts, tissue paper, old cards, postcards, ribbon, anything like that. And then you can also use any sort of fun materials that you have of your own, like glitter, beads, anything like newspaper, anything that really interests you. All right, so when you get everything all together, then we can get started. Now, the first step of artist trading cards is to actually cut down the paper. So if you notice, these are pretty small. They're about hand size. When we measure them, they're actually only about 2.5 by 3.5 inches. So when you get out your ruler, you can measure out 2.5 by 3.5 inches. And I actually already had this ready to go. So it's about this size. And a cool trick for making artist trading cards when you have a bigger piece of paper, instead of cutting it down right away, I like to fold it in half and sometimes fold it in half again, so I only have to cut one time to get that size. So sometimes I like to do that, so that way I can make more than one artist trading card at a time. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut these out. And you know, they don't have to be perfect necessarily. I'm just going to kind of do them quickly. If you're someone who is all about a perfect straight line, you can measure everything out and cut with an X-Acto knife if you want. I'm someone who's, you know, close enough type of straight. So I have these. And so with those simple folds and cuts, I have some extra paper left, but I have 4 pieces of paper that are the perfect size for an artist trading card. Now, you may be wondering, artist trading card, why do we use these? What are these used for? Artist trading cards, if you have ever used, or played with, Pokemon cards or baseball cards, you know that there's some sort of image on the front, and on the back, there's some sort of information, usually stats or something. Here I have something like artist trading card information. So I have things like the title, my name, the artist's name, the date, and materials used. And that's sort of our stats or information. So when you share it or trade them, that person sort of has a little artwork and the information by you. So that's why we make them. They're sort of like mini artworks that are quick and easy to make. It's also a good way to practice new materials. So if you're someone who likes to make art and wants to experiment a little more, this is kind of a good way to try and make some new things without like starting a giant piece of paper or a giant project. This is a good way to do some like trial. So once we have our paper, the first thing we want to do is make a base. And what I mean by that is usually when you're making something like this, it's helpful to have some sort of background. So that could mean you could just cover the whole paper, your whole piece in like a scrap paper. So that way it's like totally covered. You could totally color the back, or you could add some designs in the background, or maybe you have like some sort of like sheer or like tissue paper that you want to add in the back. That might be a good base. And I kind of like that idea, adding some tissue paper there. So I might make that my first layer. Whatever your base is, I like to make that thing kind of cover the whole background. So that way it's easier when we start to add layers. We're not so nervous about all the white space that we have. So I sort of like to do something like this. Oh, give me 1 second. Some music just started playing out of nowhere. All right, sorry about that. So we have our paper, and I'm going to cover in the background. And so I just took some glue from a glue stick, and I'm just going to kind of cover this totally. And I'm just using newspaper. I have a ton of newspaper, or I'm sorry, tissue paper, just kind of spread out from like packages and stuff. So I just kind of covered that, and I glued that down first. And I'm going to cut this that way. And if you don't have like a glue stick, and you're using Elmer's glue, you might have to wait before you move on to each next step for each layer to dry, which is totally fine, which is why sometimes it's easy to make more than one at the same time. So if we have this, let's say, have our background, and you could even decide, you know, maybe even my background has some drawings over top of it. Maybe I like the idea of doing some swirls or something. I don't know, maybe my background is sort of like a pattern type of thing. Something like that, okay? So the next step, we got to add some more details. Now the next layer, the second layer, is usually where we have more specific things. This is when I like to think of like a theme. So think about your second layer could be something more specific. So I have all these sorts of cutouts and things over here. Sometimes what I like to do if I don't have an idea in mind is sort of look at all the things I have here and say, do I see a theme emerging on its own? Without me trying to, like, somewhat force something. Or maybe I'll see, like, oh, I have some shoes. Like, this could be cool. I have a couple camera-like things. So it could be something like that. Or I have this really cool thing that sort of makes it look like it has its own frame. So I could add something like that. Or it could just be more layers of some interesting fabrics or materials. So I have a lot of these like weird scrap sort of materials that maybe I might add. And this is where having Elmer's glue or Mod Podge in a little container and a small brush can be helpful, and I can show you why. So instead of having to use a glue stick for everything, I can use my paintbrush, and I can actually just add a little bit of glue or Mod Podge right on the edge. So it's sort of like painting our glue on, you know, instead of using a stick. And this is easier when doing things in layers. So, and you can even just go right over it. And the cool thing about like Elmer's glue or Mod Podge is that it dries clear. So I could just keep adding some layers like this. And I kind of like the idea of doing some sort of like materials overlapping here, like textures. I'm all about textures and patterns. If you've ever met me in person, all my friends know I'm all about all those textures, patterns, types of things. So I might do something like this. And the nice part about doing something like this is I can always cut the excess off when I'm done. So all this stuff that I'm like layering and overlapping, I can leave it hanging off, or I can cut it off when I'm done. So I might add something like this. I loved this little frame piece, so I might keep that up here. Add that on. Use my handy glue here. Again, I'm using Mod Podge right now, but you can also do this with just like Elmer's glue and using a brush to kind of brush it on so it doesn't get so clumpy. It works the same way. Okay, and this is gonna dry clear. Okay, so I might have something like this. Now I could cut this excess off. I could also leave it if I wanted to hang off, if I wanted to have a kind of a funky shape, I could do that. So whatever you want to make like your focal point. So let's say I wanted to do something like this. Maybe that's what the top layer is here. And I just layered a bunch of things on top. I liked all these things together. Now, I'm doing some collage work here. I have some different papers. I've also done a little bit of drawing. Some people like to do artist trading cards where it's all drawing, which is totally fine too. Or maybe this is a good chance to practice with a little bit of paint. That can also look really cool too. So whatever you're interested in, this is a good chance to sort of experiment with that in whatever capacity you would like. And now I kind of spent some time doing this. And this part is like the most detailed part. So steps, we're sort of at the part where we're kind of creating. We're being our crazy art maker creators. This part can take the longest. So this is creating our second layer. We're just starting to add our details, starting to come up with a theme, and then adding our top layer, which is the most details. So this is where after everything starts to dry, you might want to go in and add some marker details. Maybe you add some shadows. Maybe you draw a little bit on top. Like I could decide that maybe I want to draw on top of something here. That could be really cool. Or maybe I want to write something. That type of thing. So whenever you decide you like the way it is, you can let it dry. So I would set this aside and let it dry. And then I would start to maybe I add some more details. So I could take a marker and I could say maybe I want this to be outlined somehow. Maybe I want to write some big words or something. Maybe I just want to draw a little bit. You know, this is the benefit of letting it dry just for the sake of this video. I'm just kind of showing you on top here. So you can add as many layers as you want. You might also get to the point and say, I need something a little more shiny. I need something that sort of sparkles. And you could add some glitter going on here. And you could do that if you wanted to. That's totally up to you. So whenever you get it the way that you want it, and you let it dry. So again, first you choose a base, then you start to add your things on top of it. So start to add your layers. So whether that's starting to come up with a theme, then start to add your little details, and then think about what you want those to be. If it's like things like drawing, shading, glitter, whatnot. Whenever it's totally done and you let it dry, then we have to flip it over and fill in the information part of our artist trading card. So this is when we add things such as name, date, title, and materials. Now when I say name, I usually add my first and last name, but that's totally up to you. You could say maybe you just want to add your first name. That's totally cool. Or maybe your initials or something. So sometimes I like to do sort of like a kind of a creative, maybe I might use some funky lettering. I don't know, maybe I do a little design or something. And then maybe I'll add some cool designs on here. So then I might add title. I always like to name my piece. Name, or you could put artist. And then date that you made it. So we are in, so I usually do like a month. So we would be like 01/21. But that's up to you. And then the materials that you use to make it. So you could do as simple as like collage, or you could do something more specific if you wanted to list all your materials. So this one I could say, I'm going to call this runway. And then I like to put my initials, something like that. And I could decorate this more too. So maybe I decide, I like this color, but maybe it needs a little more interesting colors along the way. And I could decorate the back just as much too. Now it could go on theme with the front of your card, or it could be totally different. Totally up to you. Sometimes I like to keep the back a little bit more simple. And now I'm using a marker to do this, so it's easier to see. But you can use, if you want to just use pen or black marker, or however you want to make this back part stand out. But whatever, this is our information. This is our sort of like the important part, or the stats on the back of like a baseball card. So whenever you get to the point that you're like, this looks awesome, I love this, I could say, all right, I'm ready to be totally done. You could clean everything up, so throw away any scraps, make sure everything has lids on it. Make sure everything's put away and looks just like the space it was when you started this project. And then you can share your cards. So that's why it's cool to make more than one. They're sort of like mini art projects. When you make more than one, then you and your friends or your family members could trade them. And that's the cool thing about having that information on the back for us. So whenever you have yours done, I'd love to see what you made, so feel free to not only trade with friends, but also share them with us. Either post them in the comments of this video, or even send them to the email in the written description of this video. We would love to see your work, and we might even feature it on social media. So, have fun making your artist trading cards. Feel like a real artist and make these really awesome tradable cards. Hopefully you and some friends make them so you can start to have a whole collection. When you're done, make sure to share with us. I'd love to see what you made. And thank you for joining me on Cap at Home today. Again, my name is Miss Allie, and it's great to see you. Make sure to stay tuned on tomorrow and all next week for more new free online art tutorials. And if you've missed some videos, you can always check out any of our pages on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all soon.